Thierry Henry and Gary Neville have been driven to fury by Arsenal this season. Credit Getty Images. And it has been more than a decade since Graeme Souness began work as a television pundit, and, quite frankly, he's had enough. Do you know how tiresome it is watching prima donna footballer after prima donna footballer after prima donna footballer every single week? And if there's one thing that is guaranteed to rile Souness the most, one thing that really gets his goat, it's those pathetic underachievers from Arsenal. Pathetic. It was while watching the North London Pansies lose to Manchester United on Sunday that Souness, observing from the Sky Sports studio, witnessed something that almost made him choke on his Builder's Brew, splash of milk, 2 sugars. Step forward Granit Xhaka. With the scoreline goalless at Old Trafford, Xhaka flew into a foolish, half-hearted slide tackle meters away from Paul Pogba, the man in possession, before failing to track the Frenchman's driving run into the Arsenal penalty area that set up United's first goal. Souness was livid. It's ridiculous. If he doesn't do this, then he doesn't commit his centre-halves. Get there, stand up, commit a cute foul if necessary, but don't sell yourself as simply as that. That's for the TV cameras and people sitting in rosy. It's kid football. It's more of the same from Arsenal. That guy is 25 years old and he's been at Arsenal for 2 years. Is that the first time he's done that in a game? I question no. Does he do that in training? Then if so, why hasn't it been pointed out to him? He's cost them that goal. This is a classic case of the central midfield player not doing his job properly. He goes to ground and this is, look at me, I'm working hard and trying to be aggressive. He then stands and watches, allows Pogba to end up free in the box, and he has the simple job of rolling it into the back of the net. What he should do is come across, body check Pogba and risk taking a yellow card. But this is what you do not do. It's almost as though he thinks Pogba is lining up to shoot and he's going to get a block in. What is that? That is pretend football. That is what you see on a park from under-12s. Why don't you tell us what you really think, Graeme? But the Liverpool legend is far from the only pundit to have despaired while watching Arsene Wenger's side this season. Nothing, it seems, riles a pundit like an Arsenal defeat. From Gary Neville to Thierry Henry, Ian Wright to Danny Murphy, there is scarcely a football pundit in England who has not been sickened by the sight of Arsenal. Here, in a succession of fiery blasts, thunderous fury, scathing attacks, launched tirades and withering assessments, is Arsenal's season, as seen by some seriously unhappy pundits. It may have been early days, but anger levels had already reached peak rage by the time Wenger's side were thumped at Anfield in their 3rd Premier League match of the season. Coming after defeat at Stoke City and a last-gasp home win against Leicester City, the pundits were not at all impressed. Graeme Souness, on Sky Sports: what a bunch of schoolboys. I've officially given up on them. There was always something about Arsenal I liked. Unless they were playing against Tottenham or Liverpool, I always looked forward to watching them and hoping they'd do well. Mesut Ozil and Alexis Sanchez were a disgrace today. I played in central midfield. My job was to defend the 2 centre-backs. Arsenal need proper disciplined central midfielders. How difficult is it to put that right? That first goal beggars belief. You're watching them, show me something, show me you have turned the corner, but they have taken one giant step back. That is a performance that can get the manager the sack. For professional players to be able to accept that level of performance is beyond belief. Anger management rating? 96%. Yep, he's angry. Actually, he's more than angry, he's seething. By referencing his own central midfield days, the former Liverpool man expertly gives way to his verdict, and then comes the Souness trademark, comparing the team to children. If Graeme wanted to watch this type of pitiful performance, he would go down to his local school. This isn't what he's paid for. He deserves better. Gary Neville, on Sky Sports: I'd honestly stick all the players up on the transfer list. There aren't many of them that would get a better club than where they are at. It's a well-told story that I'm not a Liverpool fan, but this Arsenal team deserve a battering. They really do. Liverpool are brilliant going forward, but how can you play like this in a big game for so many of Arsenal's players? Forget not turning up, forget not playing well, but just the general attitude or lack of respect for the shirt from 3 or 4 of them in not running back and not bothering is disgraceful. It's a great club. I came here quite composed today and I'm actually fuming and angry, and I don't know how they, the traveling Arsenal supporters, feel. Wenger must be livid. Anger management rating? 94%. Wow. By ramping himself up to such levels of fury, Neville leaves himself with almost nowhere to go for the rest of the season. Sell every single player. Deserve a battering. Disgraceful? Amazingly, Neville remains self-aware enough to admit he is fuming. A tough moment for all involved. Jamie Carragher, on Sky Sports, it is like watching the same movie. The board bottled it in the summer, they bottled it. Terrified of moving the manager on, who has been a legend there. There had to be a change of manager. Last season one called them cowards, and got a little bit of criticism for it. People said you can't say that on TV. I'll say it again, cowards, that was worse. Anger management rating? 80%, not quite reaching the same fury level as Neville. Carragher impressively manages to be even more scathing, while simultaneously keeping his anger under control. The use of the words, cowards, is a masterstroke. Carragher has been here before and taken the flack that came with his use of such an emotive word. And yet he is prepared to go to the same lengths again. That is telling. I wanted to walk out. I wanted to leave. I don't relate with this team. I am not surprised. I was expecting this. Stagnation. I knew what was going to happen today. But still, when you see it, you're like, no, not again. The way Arsenal lose the game is the problem. We are talking about desire, commitment. Have a go. The team I arrived into could fight. These guys. It is painful. As a fan, you try to be positive, but it's not nice to see. Everything that you see on the day has been happening for the past 10 years. We talk about Sanchez and is he staying, but they are not going to want to be part of this team. That is why players are not renewing their contracts. They can see something is wrong. The word I have used for a long time, comfort. Everyone is comfortable at Arsenal. It's not the same pressure you have at a big club that you should have. Everything is nice. It cannot be like that. Anger management rating, 72%. This is seriously tough for Arsenal's record goal scorer. Henry loves Arsenal, he really does. So his anger comes from a different place to his fellow pundits. When Henry questions desire and commitment, he does it from the perspective of a man who would give a limb for the club. It's actually quite painful to hear. Let's move on. This is too hard to listen to. November 5, 2017, Manchester City 3 Arsenal 1. Despite their poor start to the season, Arsenal in fact had only lost once after that Liverpool game by the time they travelled to the Etihad Stadium in early November. In the grand scheme of things, there was little shame in losing to a dominant Manchester City side. But punditry need not concern itself with the grand schemes. Arsenal are unfixable. Dixon says Arsene Wenger has created an environment that doesn't know what they're doing without the ball. Pic.twitter.com/8ht4co9, BBC 5 Live Sport, at 5 Live Sport, in November 7, 2017. I honestly think they're unfixable under Arsene. What he's got there is he's created an environment which the players don't really know what they're doing without the ball. It's quite simple. When I watch them, I think they could beat anyone on their day going forward, but they could lose to anyone defensively. That summed it up at the weekend against City. Anger management rating, 35%. A bit like Henry back in August. Dixon's perspective as a former Arsenal player means he is unlikely to reach Souness-esque levels of sheer rage. Such logic does not apply to Paul Merson, a man who sees little need for logic. Instead, Dixon crucifies Wenger while maintaining his cool. Forlorn, but in control of his emotions. February 3, 2018, post-January transfer window. Struggling in their quest for a top 4 finish, Arsenal spent big in January, shelling out for Henrik Mkhitaryan and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to replace the outgoing Sanchez. What that did not address was their shoddy defense. Danny Murphy, on Sky Sports. Right now when I watch Arsenal play, it's a joke for a top club to be so disorganized. We've talked about it until we are blue in the face. Definitely they are all over the place. Arsenal never change what they do yet still expect to beat teams. They never look like they've got a plan and their decision-making is absolutely awful at times. Wenger's recruitment in defensive areas is poor. The defenders themselves aren't that bad, but they're just not coached. Anger management rating, 50%. Another case of despair and exasperation trumping sheer outrage. Murphy lays the blame squarely at Wenger's hands while resorting to the trusty method of comparing the source of his indignation to a joke. Like his fellow pundits, he is not laughing. A lone Harry Kane goal was enough to give Spurs victory at Wembley, consign Arsenal to a third league defeat in 5 games and leave Wenger's side 7 points adrift of 4th place. Jamie Carragher, on Sky Sports. I've always questioned Arsenal's mentality, but you've always felt they were good enough. I still question their mentality, but they aren't good enough now. Arsenal are actually getting worse, they aren't getting better. 26 points from 26 away games is an embarrassment for a team that are supposedly one of the top teams in the country. Anger management rating, 26%. These are not the quotes of an angry man. 6 months on from calling them cowards, Carragher is frank in his latest assessment, labeling the team embarrassing, and insisting that they are deteriorating as the season progresses. There is no need for fury here because the statistics speak for themselves. February 22, 2018 Arsenal won Östersunds 2 courtesy of a 3-0 win in the away leg. Defeat in this match was not enough to end Arsenal's Europa League campaign. However, the shame of losing to Swedish minnows at the Emirates Stadium was significant. By Keane going in on Arsenal are a great example of how not to start a game of football. Obviously we can talk about them being a shambles. Wilshere, to me, is probably the most overrated player on the planet. Savage, tears of joy. You're looking for your senior players to lead by example. I always think, when Jack Wilshere's your captain, to me, probably the most overrated player on the planet. Anger management rating, 60% by Keane's standards. This is actually quite a composed statement to make. The former Manchester United hardman is rarely anything other than brutal in his assessment of 99% of the world's footballers, so his verdict of Wilshere as the most overrated player on the planet is nothing unusual. A little harsh, nonetheless. February 25, 2018 Arsenal 0 Manchester City 3 Another defeat against Manchester City, but this time the stakes were high and Arsenal's performance was pitiful. Pep Guardiola's side did not have to work hard to win this Carabao Cup final, and the response in the punditry world was brutal. Thierry Neville, on Sky Sports, I don't even want to talk about them because they've been an absolute disgrace. Ramsey and Xhaka walking at Wembley. Absolutely spineless. It's not even a team that play good football. Liverpool play better. Tottenham play better. Anger management rating, 98%. He's done it. You thought his outburst back in August was peak Neville anger? No chance. This time Nev can barely speak. He doesn't even want to talk about the things he has just witnessed. He is sickened, repulsed. Swear words are pinballing inside his skull, but he somehow just about manages to keep his cool enough to spit out the words disgrace and spineless before presumably smashing his microphone over his knee and storming out. I knew they couldn't do what Wigan did against City. Wigan without the ball are a better football team than Arsenal. They are the worst team in the country without the ball, and it was proven again. When they haven't got the ball, too many of them don't see danger. They don't close down. They never close down as a group, it's all individuals. You see Man City press and they all go at the same time, they all know what they are doing, but with Arsenal, nobody knew what they were doing. And the first goal went in, I just turned to my wife and said, this could be any score you want. One team was playing in a cup final, the other team looked like they were playing a testimonial. Anger management rating, 73%. Here he is. If logic and reason is what you want, Merson is not the man to provide it. Despite making it to the EFL Cup final, despite progressing to the Europa League knockout stage, and despite sitting comfortably above around 70% of Premier League sides, Arsenal still managed to be the worst team in the country without the ball. Just think how good they must be with the ball. March 4, 2018 Brighton. In a season of poor results, this was one of the worst. Graeme Souness, on Sky Sports, that's Arsenal. Pretty, but not very effective. I just don't see what winning the Europa League does for Arsenal going forward. Yes, it gets them back into the Champions League, but that's a sticking plaster over a very serious wound. Anger management rating, 42%. Souness can do anger like few others. We know it, he knows it, and the other pundits know it. So this time he isn't going to bother. The message is simple, things are bad, very bad. And nothing any of us say is going to make the smallest difference. Thierry Henry, on Sky Sports, I expected it unfortunately, and that's what bothers me the most, and I'm trying to be honest here. I wanted to come here and praise Arsenal. But did I expect to win at Brighton? No. Did I hope? Yes. Am I surprised? No. On my way to the gantry someone said, unbelievable, and I turned around and said, believable. Anger management rating, 24%. Oh, Thierry. Please can we send someone to help Thierry? This is too cruel on him. He doesn't deserve this. He shouldn't be praying for an unlikely victory against Brighton. He should be sunning himself on a beach somewhere, bathing in the glory of all those sweet goals he scored. Wilshere, Lacazette, Aubameyang, Xhaka, if you're not going to do it for yourselves, then do it for Thierry. Arsene Wenger's most humiliating defeats as Arsenal manager, safe in the knowledge that they had a 4-1 victory in the bag after the first leg of this Europa League quarter-final. Arsenal knew the cushion was large as they headed out to Russia, where a 2-2 draw was nowhere near enough to knock them out of the competition. That did not stop one pundit picking up a familiar theme after Wilshere had been substituted on 69 minutes. Roy Keane, on ITV, you need to be fit if you're a top-level footballer, and every time I see him he's getting treatment or he's carrying a knock. I've never been a big fan of his. For an attacking player, he doesn't get enough goals or assists. The guy's career is drifting. I don't like to see it, but as bad as Arsenal were, he was really bad. Has he been offered a contract? If I was him I would sign it, because if he thinks he's getting big offers in the summer he'll be surprised. The big question about him, on top of what he lacks, is that he never seems fit. That's pretty important. Anger management rating, 66%. There will be footballers you do not particularly rate. Some you may think are awful. But has anyone ever disliked one player as much as Keane hates Wilshere? Surely this is now bordering on bullying. And Roy, there's no need to remind people that you've never been a big fan of his. We know. Enough is enough.